Okay, you are recording, Henry.
Okay, you're recording now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting. This is the September 3rd, 2020 virtual meeting of the Economic Development Committee. And we'll start out with a roll call. Henry Thayer, acting as vice chairman here.
Jay Newsom.
Alex Petrucci.
Brian Smith.
Vito.
Brian Smith.
Trisha Gardner.
And Tom, if you want to chime in on
Hey, yeah, I just unmuted. Tom Ritliff, sorry.
Okay. So having a quorum, we can start out with the first agenda item, and that's COVID-19 related business reopening plans. And Rob, do you have anything to share with us for that?
So the only thing that's sort of new and what the town's been doing is we've been working closely with the university as the students are coming back. You may have seen that we published an executive order banning off-campus parties, but as part of our initiative to sort of help make sure that we don't end up with a outbreak due to the new influx of folks into town. We've also started going up and around college oriented businesses in particular, but not just the college oriented businesses. We've gone around sort of looking for issues, challenges, reminding folks of the importance of wearing masks over the next couple of weeks. And there are some issues up in the university area that I think we need to continue to work to resolve. Some of the businesses in the Emporium, for example, are not particularly stringent in their employee use of masks. And we have to, I think, remind them for the next 2 weeks that this is really an important step.
Right.
The mask encourages students to do so. So we've got to keep going. I mean, Taylor Landing Coffee is tight and popular location. That's going to be a challenge for the folks there as well, simply because the building's not very big and the customer base is. So there's some issues in and around the university that we're going to have to continue to address. We're working with the Department of Business Regulation. They are doing sort of spot checks at local bars to confirm compliance, local restaurants and bars. And talk to them about helping us sort of stay on top of the travel services for commuters into the campus over the next couple of weeks. So, you know, the Dunkin' Donuts, the coffee shops, the gas stations, any place where you'd see the RAM rewards card accepted, that's a place we want to make sure we reach out to and remind to remain COVID conscious and COVID proactive. The data nationally and in Rhode Island are not particularly good. There are a few states, big states particularly, that have a declining rate of infection. There are many states, generally with smaller populations, that are seeing an increase at this point, including New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, slight increases in those 3 states right now. And there are a handful of states where, you know, the rate is just constant. It's not changing. It's steady. We are in that category. So Rhode Island is a steady infection rate right now. Connecticut's a slight increase in the rate of infection, and Massachusetts is a slight decrease. So still a lot of COVID to get through.
I've got a couple of questions I wonder if you can answer for me. One is that I've had conversations with the hotels up on Tower Hill, and I talked to the Fairfield Inn up there, and they're housing URI students in there. Technically, they're closed.
No, they're not actually housing URI students right now. URI has contracted with the Fairfield Inn for possible housing. It is location that they anticipate having to use if
Quarantine.
is necessary, right? So if you get a student who comes in, tests positive, they'll put them there for the 2-week period.
Okay, is that true of the Hilton? And
No, it is not true of the Hilton and the Holiday Inn. Those are
okay,
uses. Those are being used essentially as residence halls. However, as of Tuesday, there were only 17 students in hotels as housing options.
okay, but no one really knows what's going to happen as time goes by.
They really don't. You know,
No.
kids are either going to choose that as an option or they're not. And right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be a popular option. But so much of this is messing with people's standard practices and habits that we just can't tell. So parking permits on campus are down 35% from this time last year.
Yeah.
Why? We don't know why. It may be because kids are registering on for online classes and they're not coming. It may be that kids are ride sharing because heck, they're coming from the same neighborhood. So why take 2 cars and you just have more commuters, so more opportunity for ride sharing. It may be that they're just going to buy the day passes because it's cheaper if you're only coming to campus twice a week. We just don't know. We're not going to know why parking permits are down until classes have been running for a week or 2.
Yeah.
Now, another question, if you please. Do we have a designated quarantine place for people in town that are working in, for example, in nursing homes? Because one of the things that at least my wife and I have seen is an uptick in infections in the nursing homes that she's working in.
So no, the town does not have a designated place for non-first responders. And actually, we've got a designated place for first responders and other town employees. We've had to put people up in a hotel. I think we've had 4 town employees over the course of the pandemic who've gone to.
Right. So it's been a small number of people then.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4.
Yeah. Have you had an opportunity to do a walkthrough on one of the schools or more than one of the schools? Because they're planning full guns, reopen 2 weeks from now.
Well, they're actually planning in South Kingstown to do a phased reopening. They're going to do feeds over a period of time. They're not anticipating 100% occupancy of the schools until October, the middle of October, October 13th or 14th.
Yeah, they have a month.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, if there's nothing else, we can proceed to the second item on the agenda, which
But I just wanted to let everybody know about the URI tests. When they come in, they're all tested, the students. And as of yesterday, the report that we get, there were over 1,700 students tested, and 4 out of that number tested positively.
yeah.
Pretty good.
Well,
I thought that was really great.
the statistics that the governor,
Completely quarantined. They're going to try to have them go home if they can, but if they can't, they put them up in the hotel.
yeah, the statistics that the governor presented today showed an infection rate of 0.7%. And that's the best I've seen it. And I've been watching that number. If it stays in that range, then we've really stabilized. And that's a good thing, you know?
We can go to Maine then.
What's that, Jay?
We can go to Maine then.
Yeah.
Yippee!
Okay, so item 2, update on the diocesan property behind Pro. So Rob, what's happening?
So let me just make sure we're not. I know that Larry wanted to participate in this conversation. I haven't had a chance to talk to Larry about it. So the property behind Prout is a 35-acre, if I'm not mistaken, parcel of land that was formerly used as a religious school and previous to that, a convent. If you haven't been back there and haven't seen the sort of really cool old stone structures, it's worth a ride back there to have a look at it. It's a beautiful site, and it's a beautiful set of old buildings. Some of the buildings on the site are not particularly interesting. They're, here we go, here's Larry.
Yeah. What's left in terms of hearings? Before that, I developed.
There's Larry. Larry, we're just starting the conversation on the property.
Music on the Hill concert for tickets, check. MUSICHILLRI.
Sorry.
Larry?
Nice shirt, Tom.
Larry is muted.
So, there have been three public meetings regarding this this property in the last, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 months. The first was a master plan review, preliminary review by the planning board for a conceptual assessment of a proposal being made by a company out of Stonington, Connecticut, that's done high-end developments, mostly hospitality, hotel type things in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, San Francisco Bay Area. They haven't done anything on the East Coast. This would be their first project on the East Coast, but very high-end projects out west, and some really neat stuff worth looking at. The planning board heard that, you know, what this company would like to do is a project called Shepherd's Run. It consists of a vineyard, a wedding venue, a restaurant, 12 hotel, hostel, bungalow type buildings, and a hotel as part of the existing complex of buildings. So a rehab of an existing building for that. So that project was discussed in a preliminary meeting. The planning board liked the concept. The applicant, or the would-be applicant, was advised that, you know, the current zoning doesn't allow for those uses. It is a residentially zoned parcel, so he would have to seek a change in the zoning in order for the project to proceed. He came back to the planning board with a proposal to change the text of the zoning, because he'd like to do the uses exist in the special management district on Route 1, what do you call it, the South County Commons zone is the one that he wants to operate under. But there are some things about that zone that were not advantageous to his future plans. So he asked for a text amendment that would allow for a vineyard, for example. Vineyards are not currently allowed in the SMD. So he wants the SMD, but he wants to be allowed to establish a vineyard. He has asked that the SMD text be modified so as to allow for on-site wastewater treatment. Currently, the SMD cannot have an on-site wastewater treatment. Those properties have all got to be serviced by the public sewer system. He has asked that that be changed and that SMD properties be allowed to have a wastewater treatment system if approved by DEM. And he's asked that the SMD restriction on restaurants that serve alcohol be changed. Currently, you can only use your property anywhere in town, actually, under any zone, any commercial zone. You can only use it for a restaurant that serves alcohol by special use permit. He has asked that the zone be changed to allow for alcohol being served in restaurants as of right. So every property in the SMD then would be allowed to serve alcohol at a restaurant as of right. They wouldn't have to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals if this text amendment is made. The next thing that he has to have is a change in the comprehensive plan. The planning board would have to change the comprehensive plan to allow for the SMD to be on both sides of Route 1. And the final thing that he's looking for is an actual change of the zoning on that parcel. He's asked that the zoning map be changed to allow the property behind Prout to be zoned SMD. So you have to change the text. You have to change the comprehensive plan to comport with the text, and you have to change the map so that you actually get the benefit of the change in the text.
How much of what you described would be new construction?
So, only
About,
bungalows, as I understand it. Only the bungalows.
so everything else would be a retrofit of existing structures?
That's correct.
Oh.
So the planning board entertained those amendments or those requested changes at their hearing last week or the week before last week, and have moved a recommendation to the town council that these text, map, and comp plan changes be approved. The town council will consider the amendment and the recommendation made by the planning board at their September 14th meeting.
Was there some reason why they wanted to go special management district rather than just get a zoning change?
It was the closest thing to what this guy wanted to do. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question. So he picked a zone that exists because it was the closest zone that allowed what he wanted to do.
What he wants.
Now, if he had wanted to, he could have come in with a wholesale new section of zoning and asked us to amend our zoning ordinance by adding a new section, but that would have been more complicated, I think.
So
So,
he
Rob-
doesn't want to be a part of the SMD. He wants to be able to use the SMD as part of the justification for his property. He wants to be a part of the SMD.
Well, every property that is zoned SMD is part of the SMD. Right?
But we have, that means that the special management district on 108 has the same provisions.
No,
as-
that's actually a different zoning provision. The SMD Route 1 is its own zoning section. SMD 108 is its own zoning section. They're actually different zoning ordinances.
Okay.
Rob,
Thanks.
question about the bungalows. Are they going to be little places for like a family to come in and rent, like a little, suite area, like a large suite? And then how many hotel rooms?
Yeah, I don't know.
No?
And, before he even gets in there with a development plan, he's got to get the zoning rules to a place where it makes sense to start drawing things.
Oh, okay.
He'll have to go back to the planning board for a specific development plan review.
Okay.
Right now, he's just trying to get the rules changed so that we will even entertain his proposal.
What would be the process to change the rule? Well, it'll have to go before the town council. They'll have to
That's it.
approve what? Approve a change or approve the town voting on a change?
Yeah, so the zoning authority, zoning authority in South Kingstown is the town council. The ordinances for zoning are established by the town council. So there will be a public hearing to amend the law relative to zoning on the 14th. The council will hear testimony from the public and will decide whether or not to change the law with regard to zoning for the SMD. Now, in theory, the changes that they're doing on the 14th, or that I anticipate they'll do on the 14th, apply to the entire SMD, and don't, until the map change happens, apply to the parcel that we've been talking about. Now, if the map change is approved, then that zone extends to the property that we've been talking about. It is, in theory, the case that this developer decides, it's just not going to work out for me. The bank didn't give me the money. We would have an SMD zoned parcel on the east side of Route 1 that doesn't have a particular development associated with it at that point. We're just changing the zoning at this point. We're not approving a project.
Should be an interesting hearing.
Yeah.
What's the acreage?
I'm sorry, Brian?
The acreage.
I think it was 35.
Did he say why he didn't want to tie into the sewer and wanted a septic system?
Because there's an existing large septic system. In order to get to public sewers, he has to go across somebody else's property.
Rob, isn't there the SMD? There's a north and a south. Are they both everything allowed currently in both the north and the south? I thought there were different things that are allowed in the north and different things that are allowed in the south.
Yeah, I don't know, Larry. I don't know.
Because there's a definite north SMD and a south SMD. And the third SMD is what we were talking about on 108. That I think all three have different uses specific to them.
So I don't know that that's true. I think that the way the SMD on Route 1 works, and it may be different on Route 108, but the SMD on Route 1 doesn't actually have a list of permissive uses. It has a list of prohibited uses, which is sort of an odd way for Euclidean zoning to be done, but that's how it's done.
That's what you get with a committee and 48 public hearings.
Yeah.
Mouse by committee would be an elephant.
I understand what you're saying now, Rob, about the by right on the liquor license. It means that everybody that is in the existing SMD would then also have their liquor license by right. Is that correct?
That's right. You're changing the rule of general applicability.
Yeah.
So it applies to everybody in the zone. Correct.
Is anybody else interested in all this in terms of that?
Well, if you give them the right to not have to go between to the zoning board, they're going to take advantage of that. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, if they ever had a drunk driving incident or whatever, the town wouldn't be able to remove the liquor license from them.
Well, no, that's not true. The liquor license is a separate thing. The zoning only governs the use that you can make of the property. So what we're talking about is whether you can use your property for a restaurant. That's
all right. Okay.
That would be of right. You wouldn't have to go to the zoning board for the special use permit. However, just because you have the right to use your property for a restaurant that serves liquor doesn't mean that you've got a license to serve liquor. You've got to go to the town council whenever you want a license to serve liquor.
All right. So that's not as bad as I thought it was.
No, it's not that. I mean,
right.
You've got this belt and suspenders thing is a matter of history. I don't understand. It's not everywhere that does things this way. It's quite common for restaurants with liquor to be a use that is allowed without a special use permit.
Yeah.
Okay, Larry, do you want to take it back or do you want me to advance to the next agenda item?
You go ahead. You go ahead. I'll just listen in.
Okay, the next agenda item is an update on Main Street. What is happening on Main Street?
So
I can answer a little bit of that, and Rob can then add to it. Wakefield Village Association hired New Leaf Landscaping to trim the trees on Main Street in a certain area from, I think, the Muse to the Times, and maybe up Robinson Street, and also get rid of all the weeds and trim them all back and kill them or whatever. And I think that's already, well, I know the weeds have already been done. I don't know whether the trees have been done, but they spent their own money. But I think, Rob, you're talking to them about
So my report was going to be that we have spoken to the I've spoken to the Wakefield Village Association and advised them if they got us 3 quotes, we'd be willing to let them change the use of their grant application because they're not going to be doing street festivals this year. I haven't seen 3 quotes, but you know, we'll figure it out.
I think they wanted to just get it done.
Yeah, I get it, but you know, I'm dealing with public money. I can't, whatever. We'll figure it out. I mean, what I had told Kenny was, look, you're not going to be using the money that the council gave you for the purpose you intended because you can't do street festivals during COVID. Clearly, we have a need to clean up the street. We'll figure out how to make sure that the funding that was made available is repurposed. But there should have been side. I'll have to figure out how to scramble and get that cleaned up. That's fine.
Yeah.
Speaking of weed cleaning, we should have elections more often. They, believe it or not, clean the weeds off of the overpass over the Amtrak on 138, which is amazing. Only because we're having an election. I'm sure of that. The timing is just absolutely perfect for it, and it happens all the time.
Another update on Main Street was that Maria Mack gave me an email, and I think Rob got it also. I haven't investigated it, but it was a link to grants specifically for main streets, and she thought that one of the grants was something that we'd be interested in that would possibly be able to be used to get funds to start the design of the Saugatucket project or Main Street redesign. And so, yeah, thank you, Joanne.
I mean, no one else is like excited.
I was hoping that you'd feel that way, and I'd like to be able to forward you the link.
Please.
and have you research it. And in her email, she said that she thought there were some individuals with some grant writing experience in planning that might be able to write it up, or you have connections too. But just initially, over the next few weeks, I'll forward it to you. You can dig into it and see if any of the things is what she's talking about, if that's
Brian,
all right.
Brian, don't
Yeah,
you
I haven't
experience,
actually done grant writing, but I'll certainly look into it and see how it might apply to some of the things that.
I've done grants.
You've done grants, right?
Yeah, I've done grants.
All right.
Send it to me also. I'll take a look at it.
You got. I'll get the book.
You think any of that grant money would be available to help with the pollution there in the river? I don't know if you saw Susan's, no?
I don't think so. I mean, this grant is really about streetscaping.
All right, because Susan's note was pretty disturbing in terms of the coliform bacteria counts in there. I think it was 8 times higher than permissible. That is, if you're going to eat the fish that live there.
There may be more dimensions to the program, though, so it's possible, Tom. I shouldn't jump to that conclusion. That's what I understood, but there may be more to it as we dig into the.
And again, not that I bought it at the time, but I remember somebody attributing the high coliform bacteria counts to birds that are pooping off branches and dogs. If that's the case, it's not as bad as septic systems leaking in.
Yeah.
Right. I think that is the case.
Okay.
And I think that this time of year is when the coliform bacteria counts would be at its max also.
Right. True.
With especially with the heat and lack of rain.
Right.
Definitely.
You know, it would be great too, when I get that information on the grant opportunities, is there some type of list of our wish list do we the low hanging fruit wish list so that I can kind of compare Grant, with what we would like to tackle first, so we're not going too crazy?
I think it depends on the parameter of the grant and whether there's only one grant or whether there's a few of them in what she sent me. Again, I haven't looked at all.
Shouldn't the DEM be involved in the situation on the river? I mean, it seems to me that they have a responsibility when a situation becomes, particularly bad. And that sounds pretty bad. That they ought to be looking at it in detail to determine what's causing it, and they ought to be coming up with a plan of action to solve it. And I'm wondering if we have involved them enough in the process and kept them posted on the information that's being developed.
I thought Susan was taking those water readings pretty much as a citizen scientist arm of the DEM, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I mean, our challenge here is that pretty much every body of water in town has got high levels beyond acceptable levels. Every
Right.
body of water, Green Hill Pond, all the way up to the Narrow River. TMDLs everywhere in town are beyond what they should be.
That much beyond? Eight
Yes.
times?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Green Hill Pond has been closed to oystering since 1994. You can't pull oysters out of Green Hill Pond. They're not safe to eat.
Oh, that's so sad.
It is.
And it's since 1994. I mean, it's not a recent problem.
They over the years, DEM has had projects where you could pull out either oysters or quahogs out of polluted areas, then transport them to a non-polluted area.
Yeah,
And
actually, a lot of that happens in Green Hill Pond. You just can't eat the oysters.
Right.
Eventually, they get cleaned up.
Yes. They'll clean themselves up if they get into better water.
Yeah.
All right. And the other, all right. So the two of you, I'll get you the link when
Brian and I will tackle it.
You got it. Thank
Else
you.
let us know.
You bet. Thank you,
There you go.
Joanne, and thank you. The other thing on Main Street is South County Motors being transformed in the Green Line Apothecary.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the work going on.
Yeah. It's not going to open till the beginning of the year, but they're going to move the apothecary and the down to that location. It's going to double their footprint and give them some office space as well, because they've really grown with the Providence location. And I think they've got six vehicles picking up and delivering now. Well, not picking up, delivering.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I know that they have a plan for the existing facility that they own, but they wouldn't share that with me a month ago because it was still too preliminary. But I think that's a really great. I look at that as a corner, a great corner anchor to Main Street right there. I think that's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Did they have any issues going before planning or anything else, Rob?
I don't think
all approved and everything.
I don't think there's any change in use. I think it's within the zones allowed uses, so I don't think there's any zoning issues whatsoever.
All right. I saw them doing a lot of utility work out in front.
Yeah, the building permits are, everybody's got to get building permits, but
Yeah.
as far as zoning or planning, I don't think there's any change that would necessitate.
So they're not going to be doing drive-through.
No, but curbside pickup. A little variation. All right, so that's all I know about on Main Street. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah. What's going on the place that's across the street from the Chevrolet dealership?
That's the old 401 Studios.
Yeah, yeah,
Right about.
yeah.
All I know is that the building has been sold, and the new owners have got two brothers painting and renovation in there, cleaning up the building. I don't know anything. Do you know anything, Rob?
No. Again, unless they're coming for a building permit or a zoning change or something like that, we wouldn't necessarily know, and I haven't heard anything.
Right.
How about Feet First? Going there.
That is still a project that is pending before the planning board. They've withdrawn or postponed the hearing at the applicant's request, but it's proposed to be a coffee shop, a sort of coffee shop bar, actually. They're planning to serve alcohol.
Well, at least it's not a bank.
No, it's not a bank.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I'm stupid about this, but what are those fences that are on the, or like rails on Main Street there near McDonald's and all that?
That's Old Tower Hill Road. It's not Main Street, but I get
Right. Old Tower Hill Road.
That's part of the
Is that for trees?
Road. The tree. I think the trees are next in line, right, Rob?
Yes, although we asked DOT to respect the fact that we have a outdoor water ban at this point. So those plantings may be delayed until we get to either over the drought or into cooler season. So the fences, Joanne, that you're talking about are just that. They're fences that will surround planted areas.
Because I was concerned that, if it becomes a bigger tree, it might kind of.
So the ones on the sidewalk side of the road are not going to have trees. Those will be plantings, grasses, decorative grasses, that sort of thing.
Yep.
The ones in the middle of the road will be trees.
Okay.
Appropriately sized, and DOT, knows what they're doing in selecting trees that won't tear up pavements and that sort of thing there.
Good.
Right. And all the people on social media that are saying, look at what they did, and the curbs have already been run over and everything else, and they got the barriers. Well, those barriers are there for now, but they're going to be trees. So if they go over them, then they'll be hitting a tree, which I'm sure will happen. They've already destroyed a couple of the fences.
So is lighting a problem? I know they're going to be doing more lighting. Is it a problem right now, or?
No, the issue is that people are simply not used to having curbs where there are curbs and fences where there are fences. Folks are used to using that middle lane as a travel lane. You can't do that the same way anymore.
Has the new lighting been implemented yet, or is it still underway?
I don't know. I can't recall. I can't think of what I've seen for lighting down there.
I don't know whether there's new lighting or not. I know it's supposed to be all right to be able to change them out to like Main Street, but that's not in this project. But we can go for grants to get period lighting instead of highway lighting, if that's what we want to do. That's how it was left the last time I heard.
I think that's right.
Is the road too wide to have period lighting? Because way back when I was with the Dutch Inn years ago, we had a Galilee lighting committee, and depending on the width of the road, there's certain period lighting that you want. Otherwise, you need the higher, safer lighting. Is Main Street, Old Tower Hill Road, a certain width that
I just don't know. I can't recall the lighting plan or the criteria for the lights that were selected or any of that.
The only thing I could add to that, Joanne, is that when you were back with the Dutch Inn, the technology, they didn't have LEDs back then.
That's true. Because that was 30 years ago.
That's right. So I wouldn't worry about it. All right, I think that does Main Street.
Okay, do you want to move on a report of local businesses?
Yeah, that's what's happening in town. Obviously, Brickley's is closed on Main Street.
Which is very sad.
Yeah. And I think that I'm not saying it's his fault, but he'll admit that he didn't have enough adult supervision down there. And he had it in Narragansett, and it was a little easier for him to control down there. So, you know, I get it. I have the same problem. Everybody does. Help is unbelievable.
Yeah.
What else is happening in town? 401 Studios obviously moved out, and they're in their house operating. In theory, anyway.
Larry, do you know anything about Peacedale, the old Patsy's Hall, Patsy's Liquor Store? Because what I heard was that the liquor store was going to move to where Joe Veely had his Liberty Rental.
Yes.
That's correct.
That is correct. Okay. What are they doing with the hall? Are they renovating it just as a hall, or?
I don't know.
I don't know. I know that they were working on the facade because it was going to fall down.
Yeah.
So they had to do that. What their plans for the building, I don't know. I haven't heard.
Yeah, the only contact with town hall was for the building permit for the facade. And in fact, that's all it was. That's the only contact with town hall we've had.
They haven't applied for anything. They'd have to move their liquor
Just
license.
the building permit, and it was just the facade work.
All right, but the liquor store moving to Veely's location, and has that anything been done on that?
So the liquor store is a different building, just to be clear. It's not the same building.
Okay.
Patsy's is separate from the hall. And yes, that has gone through the whole planning process with regard to the use up at the old Liberty Rental building. That is a permitted use now. They did receive the approvals they needed to open up a liquor store at the old Liberty Rental building. The liquor license transfer that was necessary was approved by the town council, with Joe Veely abstaining, of course.
Yeah.
About, I don't know, God, it's got to be close to 2 months now. It's been a while. So the only, there's no process, there's no licensing or zoning process that they need to complete. They're done with the permissions.
All right. So if they're using the same footprint, they could go in there and start operating tomorrow. But obviously, they've got to renovate the existing facility or change the footprint. At which time they'd have to come to the town, right?
Well, for a building permit, if you're going to be doing, serious construction, of course, it's, if it's, I don't know what they'd have to do there. There's a couple of counters that might be moved. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. If they're doing construction, they should get building permits, but we haven't seen those applications to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. In the Wakefield Mall, Island Outfitters is ready to open. I would say any day now. I know that they've got stock in the store, and I know they're training people. So that's going to be in the old Payless space. Police Planet Fitness is still committed and is paying money to the mall. So they're just dragging their feet, waiting for COVID to move on so they can operate fully as opposed to partially. And that should open by the end of the year. So they've lost a few months that I would say is directly related to COVID. The old FYE space, Pier Cleaners is taking over, and Pier Cleaners will be starting to use that spot next week. It's mostly going to be for storage of garments that are going to people's houses as part of our pickup and delivery service. But we will also have someone in there if someone wants to drop off something to be cleaned, and then we'll just bring it over to High Street. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening at the mall.
What's the status on the high school?
So, there's a lot. So a couple of things. Let's deal with Columbia Street first. We put an RFI, request for information, out to the development community to look for information on what might be done for adaptive reuse of the building or anything else anyone can think of. We've received a response from two organizations, one a Boston adaptive reuse development firm, and the other a state agency. The Boston firm came down and walked through the building with us and seemed interested, seemed somewhat optimistic that the work that would have to be done to convert the high school to sort of a mixed use, but primarily residential building was not out of this world. It was a doable project. It had some suggestions on how that would be done and how that might be made to work. Made the point that what you really want to see when you're his firm doing this sort of project is between 75 and 250 units. 75, anything less than 75 is too small a project. Anything with more than 250 to saturate the housing market. So you don't want to do that. This project seems to be somewhere in the 125 to 150 unit range. So it's right in their sort of sweet spot. This would work in terms of the number of units that you could get in the building. Some of the building components or elements would probably be spun off for different uses. They wouldn't redevelop the gymnasium, for example, as housing. He suggested, find a Boys and Girls Club or some other similar use and let them have at it. They can, they can have a local facility adjacent to the housing that they'd put in. The same thing with the auditorium. Find a local theater company that would like an auditorium. So that's encouraging, but obviously it's very, very early in the process there. State agency that came down, really the issue that came out of that conversation is we're going to have to pitch the reason for or how to reuse the building. Nobody's going to come in with a need for a 222,000 square foot, building. It's just too big for any one user. And you're going to have to come up with sort of a multi-tenant, for want of a better phrase here, a multi-tenant approach to that building. So that's going to be a complicated kind of thing. And I'm not, that was less encouraging than the private sector conversation. But again, only 2 responses from the RFI, not a lot of information for us to go on, but some information. And we're not going to be able to dispose of that property if this even goes forward for at least 3, maybe 4 years. So not only is this early in the information fact-finding phase, but it's just way too early for us to get a fish on the hook. Nobody's going to sign a contract for a property they can't even touch for 3 or 4 years.
Rob, is the hazard school part of that, going to be part of that?
It would be, yes. The hazard is a very easy, simple condo conversion. There's nothing about that, you know, any reasonable size construction firm couldn't handle. It's,
Why the 3 or 4 year
I'm
window?
sorry?
Why is it going to take 3 or 4 years to happen?
Because the high school project consists of 2 phases. You have to build 2 additions onto Broad Rock Middle School so that you can take the Curtis Middle School students and put them in Broad Rock. Then you have to begin work on the high school at Curtis Corner.
Okay.
So the project has sort of gotten to the point where there is a site plan and design drawings that are available to the public at this point. There is a cost estimate for the project, total project will be made public tomorrow morning. And we're going to have to, you know, move ahead. You know, when I say 3 or 4 years, we could be the 4 as opposed to 3 here. I think there's still some things for the community to work through. I don't know that we're going to be able to get through this, you know, as fast as some people would like us to. There's a lot of work involved in dealing with a project this size, and price is definitely an issue.
Now, Rob, if the bond issue fails in November, then
So there is no bond issue for well, let me back up. There is no school facilities bond issue on the ballot in November. The school facilities project is not on the ballot in November.
Okay. Then what is on the ballot?
There is a referendum, a bond referendum for a $6.5 million bond to support road construction, the Matuna Beach Road seawall protection project, and a radio communication system for the firefighters, police, and Public Works Department.
Okay, thank you.
When would you anticipate that being put to a vote?
The school project?
Yeah.
So the schedule to date has been April. I'm beginning to think July of next year.
That's still out of the due diligence, et cetera. And
I think we still have more work to do.
yep.
That'll be a townwide vote?
I'm sorry?
That would be a townwide vote for a bond.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it would be a special election.
Yeah.
Maybe June, maybe July. Maybe. It's hard to know.
And that's if the school committee doesn't change out in the November election, right?
I mean, all of this stuff is still subject to change, whether it's a new school committee or not. I mean, I think that there are going to have to be changes in the project going forward, no matter what. I mean, you never put pencil to page and get exactly what you're going to end up with at the end. You find conditions that force you to change, budget constraints pop up. There's all sorts of things that are going to happen. Some of those changes, in my view, probably have to happen before submission, and some of those changes are going to have to happen during construction.
Right.
And you've got the cost for the project itself, but also that would be offset theoretically by any revenue from selling the existing school.
Yeah, it's one of, well, so yeah, there's a bunch of things involved in figuring out how much the project really costs. We've been talking for, you know, a year and a half about $85 million. That number has always been the sort of cost of construction. That's been isolated from the cost of finance, although we've in our capital improvement plans described the total cost of the project, which was, as in our model, simply the cost of construction plus the cost of finance. But you're exactly right. A more holistic view of the total cost of the project is the cost to construct, the cost of financing minus revenues generated or revenues saved by building a more efficient building, for example. If we tear down Columbia Street or sell Columbia Street and reduce our environmental footprint, our energy consumption by 50%, that's, that's $100,000 worth of energy savings that should be credited to the project. It should be something that you take into account. So we're in the process right now of putting together a total cost of the project analysis. But again, price is still an issue. This is still not an easy slam dunk kind of project. There's a lot to it.
For sure.
How confident are you in the projections for student population over the next 10 years, the next 20
The
years?
current projections, so I think the answer to the question is fairly complicated, because I think the current projections that are in this most recent version of the application are probably pretty good, because they track both NESDEC, which is the Northeast New England, I can't remember, Northeastern New England School Association, which does estimates of student population in communities on an annual basis. And those have been very consistently correct for the last 20 years. They've been very good. The forecast that was used in the last phase 2 was a forecast done by a company called McKiven Demographic Research. McKiven's numbers were very different than NESDEC and very, very suspect for a number of reasons. McKiven's demographic study has been updated by McKiven, and it now matches, it aligns with NESDEC's numbers. So we now have 2 demographic studies that come closer together. So I'm pretty confident in those projections. That having been said, part of what is happening in Rhode Island now is that with school choice and these CTE, career technical education programs, being able to attract students from other districts. Our students have been going to Narragansett and have been going to North Kingstown and have been going to Chariho. If we reverse that trend, then you start driving numbers toward us. Right now, only part of our story on the demographics is that we've got a declining student age population. The other part of our story is that we've got a declining student population because they're choosing other places. They're choosing parochials, they're choosing CTEs in other districts. So that issue compounds our problem and potentially turns things around much faster. If you've got a better facility locally, then you may in fact keep your students and they may not go to Narragansett, Chariho, or North Kingstown. That is in some ways an easier element of the problem to solve.
Are they going to adjust the forecast because of COVID, specifically that there seem to be more people moving into the area and interested in that? That going to affect it?
I don't know. I doubt it, to be honest with you. And I'm not sure that what we're seeing is more families with kids moving in. I mean, our constraint on the immigration is always the housing stock. We only have so many housing units, and that's just that. They may want to come. And in fact, if you look at, there was a little study done by Bill Seymour over at the Independent. He went out and he asked the Postal Service for state pairs for changes of address. People have changed their address from New York to Kingstown, South Kingstown, Narragansett, and North Kingstown. Found was quite a big increase in the number of people from New York coming into this area, Massachusetts as well, and New Jersey, Connecticut as well.
Right.
But they were going to Narragansett and North Kingstown. They were not landing here. I mean, some, but not, not huge numbers.
So is it because their housing supply is increasing?
Particularly in North Kingstown, I think that's the answer, yes.
I will tell you that I have some contacts at LaSalle and Providence, and their student population has increased by 60 students per age group. So 9, 10, 11, 12. and the reason, and it's just recent, and the reason why is that they have committed to in-person, in-school education, no remote learning. And I don't know how it's going to go because the classes are jam-packed, and it's not like 15 students in a class. There's 30. All right, and they don't have to follow the governor's mandate of this or that or the next thing. I know the gymnasium is taken over as part of the cafeteria because that's one thing that they had to do. And I know that they've increased their ventilation systems, and they've got a whole plan of that. But you know, in terms of student population, that's a real increase, but it could be a real decrease if they have an outbreak. You know, so
Yep.
who knows? I think this year is a real crapshoot.
Right.
Student population. That was my whole point.
Rob, is the guild going to reopen?
So with town buildings, the challenge that we have is that most of our town buildings are they're old and they're very tight. You know, you start moving people through town hall or the guild, the hallways just don't allow for 6 feet between two people passing in the hallway. So you end up with COVID compliance issues as soon as you've got, you know, the occupancy that the buildings are in fact, half of the occupancy that the buildings are designed for. As soon as I'm going to use town hall, but the same thing applies to the guild. As soon as you got two people at the tax assessor's office at the, you know, the counter waiting to meet with the tax assessor, we're not COVID compliant. Two people at the building inspector's office and we're not compliant. There's just not enough room in those spaces to keep folks socially distanced, and you know the danger of that becoming a transmission point. They're in contact with everybody from around town. You know, people from all over the place are coming in to the guild and to the town hall. It's just not a great thing. So I think the answer to the question is no. I'm not, you know, 100% excited about that. I'd love to figure out how to open those buildings, but as we come into the flu season and as we are not seeing a decline in COVID cases at this point in the fall, I'm very reluctant to just open up the public buildings and say, come on in, because I just can't ensure. I mean, I can put X's down, but they're not going to be, you know, 6 feet, and they're not going to have the number of people that really show up in any of those offices. So I don't think so.
Small businesses have had to pivot on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I was saying before, there are certainly small businesses that can't do it easily. I mean, again, you know, I don't want to pick on any business, but you know, Taylor Landing Coffee has got more customers than they have space. That's a problem. That's a challenge. If they were a government office, I wouldn't have that one open.
I told Rob this privately on a phone call a week and a half ago, but my biggest concern for small businesses right now is that they're not thinking right now, if it takes a week to 10 days to get your test results back in a small business with 5 or 10 employees, even my size, 50, keeping the employees apart so they're not close enough, even with masks, so that they're 6 feet apart all the time. They're never within 6 feet for an extended period of over 15 minutes. Those are the guidelines. And so that's why Brickley's in Narragansett had an issue. That's why Dunkin' Donuts in Wakefield had an issue. And if one person has to get tested, then all people that have come in contact for an extended period greater than 15 minutes have to be quarantined. So nobody even has to have COVID. They just have to be tested, and it takes a week to get the results. But because of the space constraints in the business, the business has to get closed for a week, and that's going to kill some small businesses unto itself. And the person, nobody even has COVID. Maybe the test comes back negative.
Well, if it comes back positive, you know, it's crazy anyhow. I mean, when you think about it.
Right.
If in a week, if you get a test back in a week, what's happened during the week that's transpired? You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, no, yeah, that's why the business has to close, Jay. So the business is closed as soon as one person has to get a test. If you haven't spaced out your employees so they're not in constant contact or within a 15-minute time period constant, then you have to close. And that's what happened to these small businesses.
But what about these rapid tests? I was in the ER a couple of weeks ago. I thought I had COVID. It turned out to be Lyme disease. You know, I got the test. Now, that was in the hospital. I got the test, and the results were about 45 minutes later. And luckily, it was negative. But
here's the thing.
Rapid tests?
Here's the thing, Tom. It all depends on where the employee goes. You as the employer don't have a control. You're told you get a phone call from the employee saying, or the state saying, this employee has been tested, and you're at the whim of wherever they went. You know, and it could be Thunder Mist, it could be anywhere. I mean, so as the employer, you don't have the control that you wish you had.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is where in other locations like Westerly or Stonington, where I had an overlap of employees, one worked 7 to 2, the other one worked 12 to 7 or whatever, and they worked together for 2 hours, I've eliminated that.
Yeah.
It's a virtual high five as they leave. So if the person in the morning has to get tested, then I'm not closed because I'll move the afternoon person and another person in there to keep that location open.
Yeah.
Right. So small businesses aren't, I'll use the word enlightened to this concern until it happens to you. All right. So I've realized it, and I'm changing my pressing department versus my shirt department is totally away from one another, and they're told not to have lunches together or breaks together, and that kind of thing. Same thing with my laundry department, so that if someone has to get tested, I can move people around that are cross-trained, and my business won't close like Dunkin' Donuts or like Brickley. But I've had to pivot again 6 months into this once I identified this as a problem. And I think it's my biggest fear right now. Because let's face it, South Kingston's only had like 118 cases in 6 months. So we're not a hotbed.
Right.
You know, I mean, we have to live with the state numbers, but we are not a hotbed.
We're the third lowest rate in the state.
Right. However, URI is going to change all that.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yep.
They will.
So is Rob.
Yep.
So,
Hopefully President Dooley and Vice President Kathy Collins, they're supposed to go out in vehicles and go to the various neighborhoods, and actually, I think they're supposed to be patrolling, like even looking at areas where students congregate on Thursday nights, bars or whatever, and
Yeah.
just get a sense of what's going on. But they've had the tight fist of, if you're gonna misbehave, don't come to URI.
Yeah.
Okay, Larry.
Emails as
The
staff.
challenge up at universities is simply going to be natural human behavior. I mean, I was on campus the other night. I may go back up and run after this meeting. I was on a Zoom meeting till 10:30, so I went up and ran on campus because the lighting's good there. And, gaggles of 15, 20 kids all over the place.
That's,
right.
They had masks for the most part, but, it's just human nature for kids to get together.
Larry, if I can give you some input on COVID tests, I've had one and mine took like a half an hour to get the results back.
Yep. Yep.
My son went into South County Hospital with an unrelated condition. He had a COVID test. It took an hour. Doug Randall down at Randall Realtors, he's contracted with a firm in New London to do the testing for his offices. So you drive down there, you go in there, by the time you get home, you have the results of the tests. So there's way to do this rapidly, but the places are out there, but I'd have to sort of fault the Department of Health for not getting that information around. Yep. The nursing homes, for example, where my wife works at Brookdale, they come every Tuesday. It's mobile. It's in a van. And they test everybody in the place. And within 24 hours, you get your results. So they're there. I mean, this week, waiting a week, I don't think
it's a week anymore.
No, I don't think it is. You're right, Joanne, because I've just seen too many instances.
No, I thought the max was 72 hours or 48. So.
Yeah. So
2 weeks ago it was a week. That's why all those businesses were closed. And my person at the mall had to get one, and it took her 10 days.
Yeah. Where
did they go?
She went to Thunder Mist.
Yeah.
So that's and I don't have a say in that.
Yeah.
But I'm the one that was doing her job while she was self-quarantined. So, all right, what's the next item?
All right, Larry, it says other items of interest, but I think we've pretty much gone through every item of interest.
So there's one item that we haven't talked about that I know was mentioned as an item that folks wanted to talk about this week or this meeting, and that's the water ban.
Right.
Yep.
Susan might want to weigh in on that. So if you want to bounce that to the next meeting, but if not, I'm prepared to talk about it.
Why don't you just state your issues, and then we'll take it up afterwards. But people will be able to sit on it for a month.
I mean, here's my perspective, and it's pretty simple. I think we're trying to attract business and people coming in. Again, we could have that argument whether that's really what we want to do. But if that's the assumption that we're trying to generate more business, people are handicapped, businesses are handicapped due to COVID, and they want to increase their revenues. And you do that by having more people make transactions. So when people come into the area and at many exits, right off Route 1, you see the sign about alternate days in the water. It just sends the signal that it's a nice area, but these guys haven't invested in basic needed infrastructure. And I know Susan's approach from what the emphasis that's important.